Reading from Failsafe, The Kennedy Curse Fused with Science Fiction Fantasy, written by Susan MeeLing. That's me, Reverend MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, Lady Dori, Belle, few names I've been known by. Christopher turned his eyes to meet Luke's while he said calmly, "Only the more pronounced spirits have been able to move freely throughout the globe, and when they came across the cemeteries and religious energies of disapproval for the cherubim ones of humanity, the famous ones and the compassionate, honorable, and righteous ones in conjunction knew who to contact." Maggie said, "With specific patterns within the floors and walls of the ocean were created with specific galactic and planetary alignments, while being in tune with the various crop circles on land. The universal combination of the safe started unlocking." Before Luke could ask a question, Christopher added, "The spirits trapped within the lands of the mental asylums and unsolved murders were united with those within the cemeteries and spiritual practice." Maggie stated with a tiny grin, while sending chills throughout Luke's body. "Once the asylum souls were unlocked and released from the straps of the chairs or tables, and let out of the padded rooms to freely roam the earth, there was no way to return everyone to what is known in the common way as Pandora's box." Lowering herself to one knee, she said with a sigh, "The four groups needed to unite or disperse by a specific and specified signal to the universe in order to finalize information to the aliens, as they called them, to decide whether or not the cherubim ones of humanity had earned the next step in evolution. Have you ever heard of a celebration known as Good Riddance Day?" Maggie asked Luke as he shook his head before she said, "People write what they want to get rid of on a piece of paper to shred into miniature pieces, only to sprinkle as celebration confetti for the new year." Christopher startled Luke, asking, "What is the difference between burning the paper pieces and spreading the ashes versus shredding the paper into tiny pieces and spreading among the wind?" Shaking his head, as Maggie stated abruptly, "One destroys the intention to allow the reminiscence to transform with the wind and nourish the upcoming new, while the other is no different than sprinkling glitter onto your favorite business attire." When Luke shrugged his shoulders, Christopher clarified, "Instead of truly destroying the problem similar to the first ritual, the second only changes the appearance, thus multiplying the problems in just as many pieces of confetti each time spiritually." Luke put his head into both hands in shock while Christopher stated, "Combining the rituals with the spiritual energies while taking consideration of the Gregorian calendar in combination with the current calendar by Julius Caesar split throughout the globe created the necessary fuel to fan the flames for realities to merge." Maggie shrugged her shoulders while walking away, whispering, "The spirits and energies made their choices, just as mankind made theirs with each choice, both easy and difficult." Mott repeated her earlier declaration, "This is a moment on energies of this galaxy and universe. Heed my words and my intentions." The three returned the conversation to the inventions created throughout the time, restarting by talking about W.B. Elwood inventing the magnetic reed switch. Christopher commented of the compact version of the magnetron created by John Randall and Harry Bolt, used for various navigation systems. Annoying Maggie without Luke's comprehension, she nagged and reminded Christopher of Enrico Fermi and the first nuclear chain reactor. Luke interjected with Memex and Vannevar Bush desk memory story, creating the World Wide Web, along with the development of the first integrated circuit built by Jack Kilby and Robert Noyce. Maggie rolling her eyes, stating, while techie computer stuff has not assisted the process in the manner most would have thought in the compassionate, honorable, and righteous realms because of the cherubim, the molecular being epitary has had more significance in the discussion. Christopher used one hand to flip over, randomly facing the palm up and down, slowly adding, if Luke had mentioned the design augmented computers or DOC by IBM and General Motors, he might have been a little closer to the mark. Shrugging her shoulders, Maggie stated, I would have been more impressed if he brought up the charged couple device by Willard Boyle and George E. Smith, or even the first solar plano pant in France. Waving one hand, Maggie coldly added, even the first portable computer by Alan Kay or the first microprocessor would have been far closer to the mark than his comment. Christopher quickly moved towards Maggie and grabbed her arm, demanding to know, what is wrong with you and why are you actually being genuinely mean? Rolling her eyes and sighing heavily, Maggie replied, I am exhausted and dreadfully disappointed by the cherubim ones, over and over and over again. Mott repeated her earlier declaration a third time, while the masses quaked in agonizing fear. This is a moment on energies of this galaxy and universe. Heed my words and my intentions. Walking off into the darkened shadows of the room, Maggie contemplated, along with the relics, looking to the ancestors for guidance and inspiration. She was torn internally. While life had been fairly decent in comparison to many other lives filled with strife, she had been appreciative of the blessings she was able to count. Limited in numbers, she was grateful nonetheless. Gently running her fingers along the carved edges of the artfully crafted antiques, she listened to the screaming voices. Making her way towards the shrine, holding the oil burner, Maggie reached for the bottle to add more liquid. Removing the used votive remains to replace the containing metal, she realized the repetition. Seeing the need to constantly keep the oil tended, while keeping the flame away from harming anything else, Maggie saw the correlation needed. Somberly looking into the dancing single flame, she watched the messages piercing through. Observing the Torah appear alongside of the Quran and next to the Bible, while several other religious stones and parchments appeared within the scrying flame, Maggie's eyes were drawn to specific messages within the texts throughout the pages of the information, seemingly as if she was reading through microfiche, showing the first white wax seal with a horse impression from the group responsible for the beginning of sorrows in the cherubim ones, creating the rise of false religion and beliefs. Maggie witnessed the second red equine wax stamp, produced by the war stemming from the false religions, generating famine among the masses because of the cherubim, and showing the third black horse-shaped wax memorabilia. Famine allowed the widespread of wrath of natural disasters, from the random tornado formations on land to the typhoons throughout the oceans, bringing forth the fourth pale wax ceiling into view. Stunned, Maggie observed the next image of the sickle from the Grim Reaper as she stood in silence. A single image of the false prophet in the cherubim ones, claiming to end all problems throughout the globe, flickered within the fire, showing the compassionate, honorable, and righteous ones. Knowing Gog and Magog meant the world politico who would lead mankind to its destruction, she watched the words glimmer above the false prophet's image in the cherubim ones. Startling her and causing panic, Maggie ran with ferocity to return through the darkness, getting as far away from the horrific Babylonian reference and back to the males. She saw them calmly speaking in the corner. She tripped after knocking her hip into a table, causing her to fall to the ground. Maggie slowly raised her eyes before moving her head, looking to a picture of Abraham Lincoln and what was hidden behind a stone with the letter combination of Y as in Yankee, V as in victory, and H as in hotel. Remaining in a spot, she stared as the oil within the lamp exploded, spraying searing hot liquid everywhere. Not losing her attention or focus, she continued listening as the ancestors explained to her. The candle flame spread throughout the dripping oil, catching fire to all within the chamber walls. Ignoring the heat, she continued staring and absorbing the information being thrown in her direction. Several drops of heated oil landed on the minimally exposed skin, but saturated portions of her back. The flames expanded along the walls and relics, and as the fire jumped to on the land, on the most clothing she was wearing, Maggie remained silently still. Barely feeling the warmth of the flames lapping at her back, a few extra wing formations began to expand and becoming one with the fires. Far from bothered by the flames burning along the antiques and walls, Maggie enjoyed the sensations. Listening to the crackling flames among the mixture with the voices of the past, she continued staring at the two pieces before her. Images flashed before Maggie's eyes while she remained on the floor and her back engulfed by the flames. Slowly beginning to feel the sensation of the heat in her back, the fire jolted through to her core. She felt the ravenous burning fill her soul as all energies from the original pieces flowed through the central core. Screams of painful agony bounced around the molecules, keeping her blood flowing, while glimpses of joy peeked through randomly. Abusive tantrums echoed as existences flashed in front of her, similar to a movie screen. Many times the good outweighed the bad, but then there were the times the bad far outmeasured any of what the good could be considered as. Maggie was shown images of mankind moving to the next planet to restart the human existence, only to repeat the same patterns over and over again by the cherubim ones. The fires displayed the lifespans on Mercury and Venus before the gravitational pull changed their orbits. She was known and shown by the previous planets in which humans tested and experiment subconscious attempts to in turn, earn the next evolutionary step. Having succeeded in various endeavors, many more have failed. Maggie was reminded of the need for failure in order to learn and grow, as she was shown the many ways humanity had failed. Watching the previous unknown planets burn into the garbage disposal known as the sun, the fireball awaited the next meal. Each flare on the sun's surface reached for the next particle of food for the energy to devour. Maggie watched as humanity continued moving from planet to planet over the infinite amount of time allotted. Abruptly, the flames disappeared, as did the picture of the former president, along with the letter engraving. Stretching her arms forward to release the tensions in her back and neck, Maggie shook her head back and forth, readjusting to the surroundings to see all antiques and relics. Without any additional damages, she continued scanning the area. The residual fragrance of a blown-out candle wick remained, causing her to look at the oil lamp. Still within the same condition as she had left the brass piece in, the candle kept the tiny flame. Wiggling her hips to extend her legs, Maggie slowly moved onto her knees to push herself upright. She rotated several limbs to let go of the remaining pain from the fall and the leftover confusion. Upon looking to her right to see her buckung standing before her, Maggie lowered her head in respect. Removing the hood from his cloak to reveal his entire head had reached one hand forward to lift Maggie's chin, asking, "Why are you sad, great-granddaughter?" Maggie said softly with shame, "I just realized who you were from all this time." He smiled softly. "You were never allowed access to such information before now." She whimpered, "I have been such a failure in all of my attempts, and I am confused where I have gone wrong." Buckung pulled her close within his gentle arms. "Sweet great-grandchild, you saw the paths taken in the records, and you know this was always the only option. You." Whispering in her ear while comforting Maggie, many were sent for this mission, which added pages to the records, along with other groups who destroyed planets, leading all to the one who would be strong enough for all beings. Continuing to hold her for several minutes in silence before she could begin telling of her buckung she did not understand, to calmly say, "A male can only experience so much before being broken in spirit, and yet a man's ego never leaves," Buckung whispered. As he continued, "Man only knows how to strive outwards to be fascinated by the next situation, grabbing his attention." While she nodded in understanding, he added, "Man is incapable of giving himself 100%, as once described prior in the life of the prophet Jesus Christ." Buckung said additionally, "Jesus Christ was once a lifetime male figure who gave everything not only for the divine, but for humanity throughout as a whole." Maggie removed her head from his chest to ask, "What does Jesus have to do with this?" Turning to one side, he revealed a small bistro table set with various Asian foods and tea options. Sitting at the table together to share food, he began explaining the story of Abraham, mainly referencing the order from God to slaughter his son Isaac in the name of the divine. Buckung inquired if Maggie understood the similarities between the two. Unable to make the correlation, Buckung explained, he informed Maggie the divine being knew mankind would blindly follow whatever they were told, and through various lessons, the divine attempted to teach humanity. Commenting of the other life forms having spent far less time dancing around to figure what was necessary for their evolution. Once each species learned all necessary information before their introduction to the universe, they were exposed to the entire truth. Maggie interrupted, "I remember the stories." Buckung hushed her by telling her to eat and putting more food on her plate as he continued. The lessons referenced from Abraham was to show a balance, just as the great floods with Noah was supposed to prevent the radicalizing problems among the cherubim. Yahweh promised mankind there would not be another effort from divine hands to wipe out all of humanity ever again. In certain ways, Buckung explained the other purposes for the teachings of Jesus Christ and the other spiritual leaders with pure intentions of good. With each reference, He always made sure to point out the arrogance and poisoning from the cherubim ones for their claim to self-important power. Bakung stated Jesus Christ was supposed to inspire mankind to rethink on their own, take responsibility for their own actions, learn from the lessons, and move forward in a positive manner. Maggie mumbled with a teacup covering her mouth. It seems man and those cherubim ones decided to make their own choices and decisions. Nodding his head, Bakung added additionally, why do you think the flower name and blooming of the Amorphophallus titania has such a large influence beyond the fragrance? Watching Maggie shrug her shoulders, he added, if the final decision comes down as worried about, the fragrance from the flower will be welcomed. Tilting her head to the side, she asked, what does that flower and timing of the blossoms have to do with the mission? Bakung smiled, saying, mankind has fulfilled every option throughout the Akashic records, while creating their own to add to the pages through music, writings, artwork, and other creative ventures. Pausing briefly before he added, they needed someone open enough with the strength and wisdom to know what to do, when and what was necessary. Thanks for tuning in for this reading of Failsafe, the Kennedy Curse fused with science fiction fantasy, written by Susan MeeLing. That's me. Go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com. Check out what I've done. Make sure to watch my official videos on my YouTube channel, Reverend MeeLing. Like and share and subscribe to my channel. Thanks.